part of living in Canada and, not being the wealthiest human in existence means going the thing of being like, is that tire flat and will cause me a lot of money because I will have to replace it if I drive on it? Or will it just be cold because it's snowing and there's weather things, but also the tire is flat? But not too flat, not too flat. Because we are head thing, I have my very first presentation in 3 years. I am very nervous. I know that I film all of the time, and yet presenting for class feels really, really scary. I feel very nervous and I have a lot of anxiety around it. And I need to spend a good 20 minutes outside filling up my tires because it's always how long it is, and the grounds are completely covered in snow, and I do not have the ability to squat for long periods of time, so I'm going to be covered in snow. So we're gonna go to a thrift store and buy books, and then I'm going to go and fill up my tires as a responsible person. Did I drive all the way to my cafe shift and back with a mostly flat tire? I did. Are we always making good decisions? No. Is it the 17-year-old car that I have probably driven with literally everything wrong with? Yes, that is truth. See, it's snowing. I also thought I could cut through there and I can't, so thankfully the masks do actually help as being warm and stuff. So we're gonna walk down a little street a little bit. We're gonna find the way to the thrift store. And this is what retail therapy, that's obviously what they mean as a good, healthy thing to do in life. So I think I've officially capped my day. I was really excited though because I found The Break, which is a book that I've been meaning to read for literally years, and I keep on putting it on and on my TBR and from the library, so now I have a physical copy and I'm really excited. She is a Canadian Métis author from Manitoba, and I've had like 5 of her books to read, so I'm really excited to read this one. I think it's her most common. It won Canada Reads, and a bunch of it has so many stickers on it. I almost picked up Washington Square and Daisy Miller because it was just so pretty. But I also realized I don't need that book. I want it, but I don't need it. There was also a beautiful version of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol and other Christmas writing, and because I want to be participating in a reading of it with Katie from Books and Things, I thought that would be lovely. I do have a very big version of it from a collection of 3 other major works. Thankfully this was only $3.30 because this is a very, very cheap bookstore. I felt less bad about buying it, and this is why I love this store. So this is the other one I got. I don't normally get books that don't have their dust jackets on it, but this one is the Barchester Towers. I have looked at them because they have another old one that's really faded, but I looked then at the dedication, and if you see that, it says Anna Makins? I'm not sure, but it says January 1947, and I was like, okay, that's too cool. I was like, okay, if it's 75 years old, then I could get it, and it does hold up pretty well on the cover, and it will look beautiful. There were several other really old copies of books that I was almost tempted to get, especially since I buy everything from thrift stores, and it's relatively inexpensive, but I do also want to be knowledgeable of the fact that currently I have no space on my bookshelves. I always feel very awkward vlogging in public spaces, especially since it's near my house, but it's just the best place where you can have good light and stuff, and I really, really enjoy it. So I am leaving every year I tend to go early to visit my family because it tends to be easier, and then I get a few days at the end of the month, end of the year, to kind of wrap up. So I'm going home for Christmas tomorrow. It is the 16th. I'm also really, really excited to go see Spider-Man. Spider-Man is definitely one of my favorite in the MCU and all of that, but I have some clothes to donate, and I have some other things. I forgot about the cars are always really, really loud as well. You probably can't hear me at all, but I'm going to do that hopefully, and I'm also feeling really, really tired and emotional. I wrote I think 12 pages of papers yesterday, and then it was 4 a.m. and I was crying about Catherine Parr in the 6. It was an interesting day. home, I have sushi, which, you know, my plan was that I was going to, you know, use them so like every time I wrote like 100 words or something like that, I would eat a different one. But of course I had to start with some of them. The wasabi is already making me incredibly happy. That's probably like the best part of it is the wasabi. But I did buy 3 books. I had like so many, and there's a few that I need to research and stuff like that because there was like an obscure Canadian author there. There was some translated Latin poetry that I was super excited for. But these were the 3 books that I thought were like the most likely that I wanted or would have use of immediately. So the first one was Mansfield Park. I already own this and I spent like a month and a half reading it this summer. I had such a lovely time. I have a few vlogs where I talk about it and I just go into detail, and a Jane Austen July where I wrap up. This is fairly damaged and I got it only for $2, which is really nice. But the reason I want this is because I have a very, very nice copy of it and I have so many thoughts about this book, and I would love when I reread it or to go through now and leave some of my thoughts in it so that I have it. And I often like favorite books where I like having an option where I can have a version that looks pretty and also have a version where I can annotate it. And I would love to annotate this version because I have so many thoughts about this book, mainly about Henry Crawford and how much I love him. I know that's not a super popular belief, but I really, really love him. So this one was the most expensive and the one that I was most hesitant to buy because, you know, it was $2.50, so it wasn't that expensive. But this is the selected writing of Gertrude Stein. So this isn't a very beautiful version, but it is a fairly long collection, and I really like this. I find this era of like the 1920s and even like the 1910s and kind of earlier into Korea and stuff like that very, very interesting. I find Gertrude Stein very interesting. I read some of her poems and short work in a collection of Women Who Write, who was one of my favorite books of this year. I have a review of the anthology in there, and it's just going through classic women writers, and I really, really liked it. This has a lot of her thoughts on like different writers, on Picasso, on different artists, and she has this very interesting style. So even though this is a collection that I am probably not like the most hyped for or like the most excited for, this is not an easy thing and it would probably be quite expensive to buy normally. And also I feel like this is a great resource to have in my library. Like it's a book that I would appreciate having in my library, even though it might not be the book that is the most flashy. And this one was just really beautiful and was the first thing that I came across. And I actually did have it on my Goodreads. Not having data sometimes is very frustrating because I don't have Goodreads and I can't look them up, but I was like, this is so pretty. I really enjoyed it. I read the beginning and then I flipped through and read some odd lines and stuff like that, and I really, really thought it was beautiful. It's about these 2 men who were best friends when they were growing up and they haven't seen each other in years, and one of them is married now and one of them has done something else. And it just sounds like it's going to be really, really lovely. I have enjoyed this. I enjoyed that it's short. And yeah, I want to be not as much afraid to pick up books that are more literary fiction that I haven't heard of before because it's a genre I want to read more, and I tend toward buying mostly classics. And then there were some other books that I really wanted to buy and I ended up not buying. I really wanted to buy Old Curiosity Shop by Charles Dickens because it was a very nice copy, and it was like the nice beige ones that I have a lot of copies and I'm collecting of. I love my Penguin copies. Like also probably one of the reasons why I bought this kind of more beat up one is because I have Sense and Sensibility, Emma, and I think Pride and Prejudice. I own at least 2 or 3 of the versions of Jane Austen in this, and I would love to have all of them because these are definitely some of my favorite. They're not always my favorite on the front, but I find them such beautiful, and like they're the best to annotate. They have such great annotation spaces and room in them, and I really find them really lovely. So these are some of my favorite copies, even if the covers aren't always the prettiest. There's a whole collection of the Narnia books where I had gone through a few years and rebought them because I returned my copy to my parents, but these ones were almost out, so I was almost tempted. And then there was also an older version where I love the Chronicles of Narnia. I haven't reread them. I'm a little afraid to reread them because it's been quite a while, and I've, you know, heard some things haven't aged well that I didn't catch as a teenager or like a child when I read them so many times. But I have some versions already and I would love to know more and to own more, but I didn't love those, and even though there was 4 of them, I figured that I should buy other books first rather than just collecting versions of my favorite books. So I ended up going on some interesting rants about the videos that I wanted to make that I'm definitely not going to be able to make now. This is probably going to be my last video until the 28th or the 29th, and I'm going to wish you a Merry Christmas and thank you again so much for a fantastic year. January 2nd is going to be my 5-year anniversary of my first video on YouTube. It wasn't my first booktube video, wasn't until kind of May, but my first actual video was in January of that year, and it's insane. So thank you so much for another year.